pleasure to introduce the governor of New Jersey, great friend of great governor, Christie.
Thank you, brother. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be back in Wisconsin. Great to be here with my friends, the Walkers, as they enter the last 4 days of this campaign. And I'm not going to talk to you about Scott's record and those specifics. Rebecca and Scott can do that much better than I ever could. And they can lay out for you all the things that they talked about in 2010 and all the great things they've accomplished in the 4 years since then. They can lay out for you better than I can the vision that they have for the future of Wisconsin and what their plans are for the next 4 years, how to make them even better than the last four have been. It's not my job. My job today is to tell you about when you make this decision on who to vote for governor, you can't anticipate every issue. See, we know there'll be discussion of taxes and spending, job creation, education, making the state more affordable for families, and making sure that education is something, no matter what type of education you want to pursue, that's within the reach of your children and your grandchildren. Those are things you can predict. But one of the things I've learned over the last 5 years, and I want to share with all of you, is that there are lots of things that are going to happen when you're governor that you can't predict. Now, Rebecca talked about Haley and how he dealt with Hurricane Katrina. And 2 years ago, 2 days ago, my state got hit by the worst natural disaster that our state had ever seen, and the second worst in the country's history in Hurricane Sandy. I can tell you that they don't teach you how to deal with that stuff in new governor's school. There's no 3-ring binder they give you to say, okay, well, if you lose 365,000 homes in one day, here's what you do. See, that's not the way this job works. And this is the strength of Scott Walker. You see, the one thing that you can judge before you vote that applies to everything that'll happen, those things they talk about and those things they couldn't possibly anticipate, are honesty and integrity. See, because every day that's what you bring to the job if you have it. If you have it, you bring honesty and integrity to the job every day. That you're a good listener, because honest folks listen. That you keep your word, because that's what integrity is all about. That no matter what the challenge is, that you'll make the judgments that you make on behalf of the people, not only with your head, but with your heart. You can't do that if you're not a man or a woman who every day has honesty and integrity. Now, for 4 years, I've known your governor, and I've worked with him as a colleague, and I've gotten to know he and his family as friends. And so I can tell you that you're very lucky in Wisconsin for this reason. You got a clear choice in this election. Elections, everybody, are not a referendum. They are a choice between two different people, the traits they bring to the job, and the vision they have for the future. You've now watched under some very trying circumstances with some very difficult decisions to make, whether or not Scott Walker would stand up with honesty and integrity and make those decisions. Not that you're going to agree with every decision any of us make. I tell voters in my state all the time, if you're looking for the candidate you agree with 100% of the time, go home and look in the mirror. You're our it. You're the only person you agree with 100% of the time. And if that's the standard you hold us to, well, then you'll never find anybody satisfactory. But has he conducted himself honestly? Has he told you, the people of Wisconsin, the truth about the problems you face, the solutions he proposes, and the opportunities which are within your grasp? I respectfully say to all of you, the answer to that is a resounding yes. And has he acted with integrity? And by that I mean, does he keep his word? When he says something, does he not only talk the talk, but does he walk the walk? Is he willing to put up with the slings and arrows that come with leadership when you actually make a decision and have to put up with the critics? Well, he's done that. I'd respectfully suggest to you that under some of the toughest circumstances in the nation, he's done it. And so now here we are, 4 days away from a final decision on the next 4 years in Wisconsin. And I can tell you, after my 5 years of working in this job in New Jersey, which is an interesting place to do this job. In those 5 years, I've learned that honesty and integrity are the only things that travel. They're the things that matter the most. And you have a governor who has those two qualities, has exhibited those two qualities every day when he comes to work. And if you give him the chance, will give you exactly that same type of performance, if not better, over the next 4 years. So I'm thrilled to be back in Wisconsin and very happy to introduce to you your governor and my friend, Governor Scott Walker.
You got it. Well, thanks, Chris. And I think it's a good omen because Chris was here with me with another one of your families. You got your son. His oldest son is here today with us. He's a junior, just like my son Matt is with us here today. And we appreciate that. His daughter, who's now a freshman at Notre Dame, was with us just a little bit over in Wausau 4 years ago, right at the end of the campaign. So I think it's a pretty good omen. And we've been crisscrossing the state the last few days. The only person from outside the state who's joined us was my friend, Governor Christie, and I got the added bonus of my friend Barbour coming along for the trip. Great team, two people I've admired. And I got to tell you, Chris, you're a lot of fun. You and Mary Pat and your kids have been great friends to us over the past 4 years, and we're looking forward to working together both for Wisconsin and New Jersey and the rest of this country for the next 4 years. And we've been crisscrossing the state, and I say we because Rebecca Clayfish, our great lieutenant governor, has been with us. Tonette, my wife, greatest first lady in the country, no disrespect to Mary Pat, but is right here as well. We're blessed today. One of our sons, our other son, has still got classes today at UW down in Madison, but our son Matthew's here from Marquette. We've been crisscrossing the state on the bus tour. And it's actually kind of fun because yesterday we were in town just down the way at JARP. We were over in town here with, that time Ron Johnson came with us. 2 days ago I was in town over in Wausau with Sean Duffy. You see a pattern here. I'm here almost every day. I actually know where north central Wisconsin is. I know the difference between Schofield and Weston and Marathon City and Brokaw and Wausau. I can't say that for every other candidate out there, but we'll leave it at that. And we were, just a few days ago, we were with Paul Ryan. Actually, it's kind of funny. When you raised your hand about early voting, I love your shirt because you get a kick out, so all the rest of you will as well. We were traveling around. One of the places we were at was in West Salem. If you don't know where West Salem is, it's just a little bit east, ironically, of La Crosse. And one of the great joys I took that day is Rebecca and Paul Ryan and I were touring around this place, and they make great metal frames. And one of the things they showed us is they're making the tops of the roof, the frame of the roof, for the Vikings Stadium over in the Twin Cities. It's being made by Cheeseheads. How do you like that? So Paul and Rebecca and I went on that top beam and wrote "Go Packers" and signed our names on it. And I said it was appropriate because, we're more cost effective, we're more efficient here in Wisconsin. I understand that they need to save some money in that new stadium. Even though they'd shaved about $1 million off the cost, they decided they didn't need a trophy room. So I thought that was pretty good, right? Plenty's a good friend of ours. We used to kid him, you know what this is? That's the Vikings showing off their Super Bowl rings. So that's all right. But it's great to be back in north central Wisconsin because we got a great story to tell, and it's just a few days before the election. And we've been here plenty of times before. You've heard us, the latest job numbers, 8,400 private sector jobs created last month alone. That's the best September we've had in more than a decade. Lowest unemployment rate we've had in about 6 years since October of 2008. If you look at last year in September to this year in September, we ranked fourth in the Midwest for private sector job creation. Not last, like my opponent's ads say, fourth in the Midwest. And when you think about manufacturing, construction, I'm proud to say that we ranked fifth in the nation for new manufacturing jobs. That's why we invested more than $100 million into worker training, workforce development, places like NTC up the way here where I worked with folks on construction and welding and other things out there because we understand we want to invest in the kind of jobs that are paying 2 or 3 or 4 times or more than minimum wage. We don't want to be arguing about how low wages can be. That's the other side. We want to talk about how we can lift everyone up so that everyone who wants a job can find a job, and that job can be one you can support your family with. Isn't that what we want? Yeah. And so we've got a great plan going forward. We took a $3.6 billion budget deficit, and we turned it into a surplus. And we did it the old-fashioned way. We actually paid our bills off. We paid off the $1.4 billion that was rated from the transportation fund. We paid off the money that was rated from the patient compensation fund. Heck, we even had to pay money back to Minnesota. I got to tell you, that pained me. That just pained me. I gave it to Governor Dayton that check that Governor Doyle had forgotten to pay off, and I said, at least you need to know that you have 0 world championships and we have 13. But our rainy day fund's 165 times bigger than we took office. Our pension is the only one fully funded in the country. We are on the right track. We have paid off our bills. And so early this year when we had a surplus, what did we do with it? We gave it back to the people who earned it. You, the hardworking taxpayers of this state. $322 for a typical family. Lower property and income taxes than they were 4 years ago. And a plan to make them even lower 4 years from now. You know what my opponent said at the time? She said, that's not right. She said, you need to keep that money in Madison. I don't know about all of you, but whenever I come to Schofield or Brokaw or Wausau or anywhere else outside of Madison, I don't hear anybody say to me, hey, Scott, I don't think we send enough of our money to Madison. Nobody says that, right? And nobody says my taxes are too low or they're just about right like my opponent says. When I hear people say time and time and time and time again, or if you want to continue the economic recovery that got us a surplus in the first place, keep giving that money back to the people who earned it, the hardworking taxpayers, so that as consumers and employers and investors and entrepreneurs, you can put that money to work. That's what it's all about. And that's the choice you have on Tuesday. Now, I don't know about all of you, but how many of you before work this morning or last night watched any TV? Anybody turned the TV on in the last 24 hours? Yeah, most of us here, right? How many folks have seen political ads on TVs over the last couple of days? How many people are sick of seeing political ads on TV, right? Now, I want you to think about it for a minute. For all of you who've watched TV in the last few days, last few weeks, last few months, but particularly recently, how many of you noticed something interesting? How many of you noticed that just about all of the ads that are run for my opponent are ads, not just ones she runs, the ads that the tens of millions of dollars from the Washington-based special interest groups are funding? You notice the trend is almost all of those ads are talking about why they're against me. You notice what my ads say? My ads are talking right like we're talking right now. Sitting on the couch, looking you right in the face, just like I'm sitting in your living room, talking about what I'm for. My opponent is against something. I am for something. I am for a better Wisconsin. I am for a better life for your children. I am for a better life for your grandchildren. I am for a better education system in the state. I am for better technical colleges. I am for a better UW system. I am for a better Wisconsin. And I'm betting on Tuesday, you and the rest of the people of this state don't want to vote against something. You want to vote for something, right? Yeah. I said, that's really the contrast. Think about it. Those Washington-based special interest groups that are running those ads, and not one, not two, but three national groups have come in. In fact, he came in again yesterday in Milwaukee. 3 of those national big government groups, special interest groups came in, and they said, I'm their number one target. Number one target in the country. Not the number one governor. I'm the number one target in America. The House, the Senate, and governor. You know why? I took their power away. I took the power away from the Washington-based special interest, and I put it firmly in the hands of the Wisconsin taxpayers. And as long as I'm governor, and as long as Rebecca Clayfish is your lieutenant governor, every time we have a chance to shift power from the powerful special interest to the Wisconsin taxpayers, we're going to stand up with the Wisconsin taxpayers. But you see, the folks in Washington don't like that very much. That's why they sent their surrogates in. That's why a week ago in Milwaukee, not Wausau, not Schofield, not Brokaw, in Milwaukee, they sent the former president. That's why on Tuesday in Milwaukee, they sent the President of the United States. That's why you see the head of the AFL-CIO from Washington and all these others, Elizabeth Warren, one Washington-based surrogate after another coming into the state. Why? Because they want their power. They have picked their candidate. And the candidate of the powerful special interest in Washington is not me. It's not me. In fact, they want me out not just for what it means for Wisconsin. They want to send a message across America. They want to tell people across America from the local level to the state level to the federal level, if you dare stand up against the powerful special interest, we're going to take you out. That's what they want. So on Tuesday, this is not just a vote for governor. This is a vote for our country. This is a vote for our country. If you want to make sure that there are leaders in this country at every level of government who stand up and think more about the next generation than just about the next election, I need your vote. I need your vote. That's what I'm here for today. I'm here to ask for your vote next Tuesday. For those of you who raised your hand, thank you for voting. For those who haven't, you need to figure out a way between now and 8 o'clock p.m. next Tuesday, the 4th of November, find a way to get to your polling place and vote. And today I ask for that vote, not on my behalf. I love being your governor. I love hanging out with people like Chris and Haley and others. There are great governors across the country. I love coming up here on my Harley. Love going over to the dealership in Rothschild where I got my helmet. I love touring the state as governor. I love hunting. In fact, I'm hoping next weekend I get out with my bow, and a couple weeks later I'll be out with my rifle, deer hunting in this state. I love doing all that. I love visiting factories and farms and small businesses from one end of the state to the other. There's just some amazing people we've met. Tonette and I love being a team as governor and first lady, proudly representing the people of this state. But I'm not asking for your vote today on our behalf. I'm asking for your vote today. I'm asking for your vote today on behalf of Matt and Alex. See, Matt, who's here with me, and Alex, my other son, who's 19, I ask for your vote today on their behalf because more than 4 years ago, when Tonette and I sat down and thought about, talked about, prayed about getting in this race, we knew it'd be tough. You see, the last time a Republican has carried this state for president was 30 years ago when I was in high school. We knew getting in this campaign would be tough. We knew there'd be attack ads and grief and coverage and all the things that are hard for a family, but we knew it would be worth it. You see, because back then we were afraid. We were afraid that our sons were going to grow up in a Wisconsin that wasn't as great as the Wisconsin we grew up in. And I got to tell you, as a parent, that was just fundamentally unacceptable. And so we got in the race, and we won that election. And not long after that, we had to make some pretty tough decisions. Decisions even people here today might say, I didn't agree with everything you've done. I didn't agree with every way that you did it. But I hope today you can see that our motives were pure. It wasn't about politics. It wasn't about a position. It was about ensuring that for Matt and for Alex and for all the other sons and daughters like them, for all the other grandsons and granddaughters like them and those yet to be born, that they could grow up in a Wisconsin that was even better than the Wisconsin we grew up in. Today, I'm proud to tell you that because of our reforms, that's exactly what this generation is doing. This new generation is growing up in a state that's even better. And for that, I thank you for the opportunity to serve, but I ask for your vote because you see what's on the ballot on Tuesday isn't just my name, it's their future. You see, I don't want Matt and Alex and their generation to go backwards to the way we saw 4 or 5 years ago. You remember it here. This was a company that had 500 or 600 employees back before the recession and went down to 350. You're back up to 500 today. You've got people back to working full time again. You're working hard, I would imagine, just like Tonette and I, not because you want a paycheck, not just because you want a title, but because you want the same thing I'm talking about. You want your children and your grandchildren to have a better life than you've had. And that's exactly what I want for this state. So on Tuesday, I ask for your vote on behalf of my sons and your sons and daughters and all those yet to come, because I don't want to go backwards. I want to keep going forward. Together, that's exactly where we're going to go. God bless you. And then I'll have Chris say something, and then you can fire away. So I'm sure you got no questions, right? Great to be back in the Wausau area, north central Wisconsin. I was here yesterday, here 2 days before, here with Christie today, with Sean Duffy the other day, with Ron Johnson, Senator Ron Johnson yesterday. Pleased to be with Christie and Haley Barbour, two good friends of mine, two great governors. And we're here, as I mentioned, really the story, I think, between now and Tuesday. The ending point we're making, the ending argument is not only that Wisconsin is much better off than it was 4 years ago, but we got a plan to make it much better. And that specifically, I believe the people of this state want to vote for something. I believe time and time again, we've seen from both my opponent and her allies out of Washington and the groups that they're funding here in this state, that they're trying to convince the voters of the state to be against something. They haven't laid out a clear plan for the future. They're betting on people voting against something on Tuesday. I'm betting that the people of the state want to be for something. When you think about the changes, we went from losing 133,000 jobs to gaining over 110,000 jobs. We got down to the lowest unemployment rate we've seen in some 6 years. We're at a point where we took a $3.6 billion budget deficit, turned it into a surplus. We went from higher taxes and higher tuition to lowering taxes and freezing tuition. We've got a great story to tell in this state, and over the last few days, we're not only going to remind people of that story, we're going to point out not just our record, but our plan for the next 4 years, and that we're running on our record, but more importantly, we're running for the future of the state over the next 4 years, and that we believe people of the state want to be for something, not against something. And that's exactly our message here today. So with that, I want to turn over to my good friend, Christie.
Thanks, Scott. Listen, I'm happy to be back. This is obviously, as I've said all along, a very, very important race, not only to the RGA and all of our Republican colleagues, but also to me personally. And so in the last 4 days of this campaign, to get a chance to come back here and spend some time with Scott and campaign with the people of Wisconsin is really important. In the end, I think Scott's put the message very, very well. And at the RGA, what we're going to be trying to continue to do over the course of the last 4 days is what we've been doing over the course of the last 4 months, which is do everything we can to make sure it's clear to folks that this is a choice. And that's a very clear choice. And I think Scott's record is one that has earned a second term. And I'm confident that on Tuesday he's going to get it. So happy to be here and look forward to our next stop on this trip, and look forward to working with him over the next 4 years.
Haley, you want to say anything?
I'd simply say that I was chairman of Republican governors 4 years ago when Scott Walker was elected governor to start with. That's why I'm here, because this is something I'm very proud of. He's another Republican governor who can run for re-election on his record, like Chris did. Christie never ran a negative campaign spot in his whole campaign when he got reelected with 60-something% of the vote in a state that hadn't voted Republican for president since 1984. I think we're going to see Scott Walker get reelected for the same reason, a great record that he has talked about much more thoroughly than I can. But I'm glad to be here to be part of this.
Thanks,
Governor Christie, Governor Walker spoke a moment ago about the national implications of this race. From the RGA's perspective, do you see this as the most important governor's race in the country?
Oh, sure. Listen, I've said all along that both here and Florida are probably the two most important defenses that we have in the country. Now, defending every incumbent is important. But the fact is that there are some states where, as Scott said, the Washington special interests are trying to make an example of people. And so it's our job to make sure that we fight back extra hard in those places. They're trying to do it in Florida with Rick Scott. They're trying to do it here in Wisconsin. They're trying to do it in Michigan with Rick Snyder. And so we're fighting hard in all three of those states. Those, by the way, are the three states where the RGA will spend the most money, is Florida, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And there's no secret as to why. We've got three great incumbents that we think deserve defending, and we also have some significant outside special interests who are fighting against those three governors. And so the RGA tries to come in and be the equalizer.
There's been some indication that on the Senate level, Republicans are going to maybe take the U.S. Senate. Why do you think some of the governor's races seem to be so close, given that there might be, on the national level, a wave towards Republicans?
Well, I think, listen, no disrespect intended to any member of Congress, but everybody knows who their governor is. And those races are much less susceptible to national waves than are ones in Washington, where folks are a little less well known to the people of their state. They see Scott Walker every day here in Wisconsin. They see how he works hard, how he's doing the things that need to be done to try to move the state forward. And as a result, you're going to have those races be judged much more on local issues and on records of incumbents and plans of challengers than you may see in national races, which tend to be more about a bigger party message. You know, Scott Walker's record in Wisconsin should be judged up or down on its own merits, and I think up. And so our governors are happy to be judged that way, but I think that's why you see the races being more close and not really being susceptible to a wave like some of the other races are on the Senate or the House level.
And Charles, just one quick thing on that, because this ties in perfectly with what Chris just said. But remember, back in February, we talked about this. Chris and I talked about this specifically. In Houston, Texas, the big government unions nationally voted to transfer $300 million. This wasn't just recently. In February, $300 million for money they normally spend on congressional races, so the Senate and House races. They shifted it from federal races to the states. And what states did they go after? Wisconsin, Florida, Michigan. At that time, they talked about Maine and Pennsylvania as well. So the states that you see them spending the most money in right now, those Washington-based special interests, are the ones they said back in February they're going to transfer money from. So they recognize, and again, We're hoping the United States Senate switches hands next Tuesday as well, because we think it's good, not just for Republicans, but more importantly for America. But in the end, there's a reason why they've shifted this money into these state races, because they understand governors can get things done. They don't like the fact that governors in many of our states have gone out and taken the power away from the powerful special interest in Washington and put it in the hands of their local taxpayers, and they want to go out and punish them. That's what, as you all know, that's what the head of ASME said. He said, this is about payback for me. The reason I'm their target is because it's about payback, not good public policy, not about protecting the taxpayers, not about what's doing what right here in the state. It's about payback out here. So they signaled that early on. We appreciate the support of good people from this state and across the country who've helped us out. We appreciate the support of the RGA coming in to try and be that equalizer, because we've never seen anything like this from those national interests in Washington.
Governor Walker, coming from France, what's the most important foreign issue for you at this moment?
Oh, listen, I have to tell you the truth. There are so many issues across the world that America should be more involved in and should be exerting influence in a positive way, and aren't because of the failed policy of the president. We won't have enough time to talk about all of them. And my focus over the next 4 days is to make sure that my colleagues, the Republican governors and the Republican gubernatorial candidates, get elected and re-elected in large numbers. And so there'll be plenty of time for all of our national leaders to be discussing the shortcomings of the president around the world that America's feeling and that our allies are feeling. But now's not the time to do that. Now's the time to focus on Scott Walker, Rick Scott, Rick Snyder, and a lot of our other really great candidates across the country.
Governor Walker, the Burke campaign issued a pretty tough ad today linking you with Mr. Ellerman. What's your reaction to the ad? What does it speak about the Burke campaign that they would release such an ad?
I think they're desperate. I think they can see the trend. They can see that voters have started to show in the last few days that they're shifting away and really, I think, pushing away from the negative attacks we've seen over and over and over again, both from my opponent and from our allies from Washington. And I think people are moving towards a more optimistic view of this state over the next 4 years. And I think, desperate candidates do desperate things. As you've heard me talk, as I mentioned again yesterday, you didn't hear us talk a word about that story. We're talking about how much better things are than they were 4 years ago, how much better they'll be over the next 4 years, how we're ending up on a positive, optimistic message about where we're taking the state. And I think it just makes our point when the closing argument from my opponent is a series of more attack ads out there, or as opposed to me sitting on the couch, looking right in the face of the voters, talking about what I'm for, not what I'm against.
Governor, Mr. Ellerman, he has those things on his Facebook. Do you think he should continue as the chair of that county?
I think any discussion about that when we've got more important issues for the next 4 years is just a huge distraction. I think they want to distract from the fact that voters in this state overwhelmingly are shifting towards our campaign because they can see that we've got an optimistic future and they want to get in there.
Mike, Governor, I understand what you're saying about the theme of not being against something and being for something, but do you think over the last couple of days there's an emerging case against Mary Burke's candidacy, and if so, what is it?
Well, again, as I pointed out yesterday, if we've heard those rumors for months, as have all of you in the media, and we've stayed away from them because we had no way of validating that, nor interest in doing that. For us, if we were going to push that, we would have pushed it a long time ago, probably right after the plagiarism issue came on the table. But instead, we've laid out a clear case as to why we thought people should vote for us based upon both our record and our plan for the future. I think in the end, people want to end on a positive note. They want to vote for something, want to be optimistic. And again, I leave it up to the media and everybody else to scrutinize any other candidate. But I think my record is clear. I'm transparent. People know everything about me. They know what I've done in the past, and they know what I plan on doing in the future. And my goal is to make sure enough of the people who support that get out to vote for us come this Tuesday.
Thanks, guys. That's all we have time for.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you all.